Everyone. Good evening and welcome. My name is Chris Martin. I'm the Outreach Director at the Davis Center for Russian and Eurasian Studies here at the university. And on behalf of the center, I'd like to welcome you to tonight's program, Georgia, Cradle of Wine and Polyphony. This is the second of two programs we've offered just this week to celebrate the culture of Georgia. And we're so glad to see so many of you here tonight to celebrate with us. So first and foremost, I'd like to thank our sponsor, TBC Bank, which is headquartered in Tbilisi, and without them, we couldn't have brought these wonderful musicians and Dr. Bagashvili to campus tonight, so our gratitude to them. So just a heads up, the format for tonight's event is that we'll start with a talk on Georgian music and culture from Dr. George Gia Bagashvili, and following that, we'll have a concert of Georgian folk music by members of the Gordela ensemble. Then we'll have a light reception just outside this room on the concourse level, and we hope you'll join us for that. So to continue with our introductions, I'd like to welcome to the podium right now Dr. Richard Wolf, who's the Professor of Music and South Asian Studies here at the university. Dr. Wolf.
Good evening, everybody. It's my great pleasure to introduce Dr. George Bagashvili. He's a well-known Georgian folklorist, ethnomusicologist, and cultural activist, and the general director of the artistic union Lomisi, a Georgian creative association. In 2000, he was awarded the Georgian State Prize for the creation of the Mengrelian songs potpourri, and he's also led several folkloric television and radio programs. He's the author of numerous scholarly publications and participant of the regular Tbilisi International Symposia on traditional polyphony. Tonight, he'll present his brief talk, Georgia, Land of Wine and Polyphony. I just wanted to say briefly, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Georgian polyphony, but it's really quite remarkable, and we're very lucky to be able to hear it tonight. Recently, I saw a film by, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but Otar Yosliani, Falling Leaves, and it's just remarkable. I don't know whether this is still a practice today, maybe you can tell us about it, but there were these wonderful scenes of men drinking wine together, and then they just broke into song, and you could just see the kind of fellowship that brought, and it's something that we certainly don't see in our everyday lives here. That may be a romantic picture of the, I don't know, 1950s Georgia, but whatever it may be, makes me very excited to hear this talk, so welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, it's a great honor for me to be here in Harvard, to have an opportunity to present Georgian culture. And first of all, I'd like to say many thanks to you for your coming, for your time, and for your interest toward Georgian culture. Thank you very much for that. In Georgia, they say, when the people appeared on the earth, God sent grapevines after them. This popular saying doubtlessly indicates the special purpose of grape wine and wine culture for our culture, for Georgia. And indeed, Georgian national identity, culture, customs, character of our life is closely linked to the polyphonic singing and to the viticulture and wine growing that has 8,000 years of uninterrupted history. These are the topics I'm going to present in today's talk. But before the main ideas, I would like to express briefly about Georgia, about the country. Georgia lies at the crossroads of Europe and Asia, at the southern inclines of Greater Caucasus mountain range. The population of Georgia is approximately 5 million. Land's geography and topography landed great national diversity. snow-capped mountains with strong crashing rivers and subtropical valleys on the Black Sea shore, semi-deserts and alpine pastures, all are found side by side in the country with a total area just 27,000 square miles. And along with such a contrasting natural conditions, there are an astonishing diversity of cultural traditions. People from different provinces of Georgia can easily be distinguished from one another by their homes and habits, customs and more, speech, dances, and songs. Georgian language belongs to Caucasian, Kartvelian language family, and people refer to the country as Sakartvelo, or the land of Kartvels, the Georgians. The word Georgia was given by Europeans to the country, and it derives from the Greek georgos, that means farmer, by extension, wine grower. And the Georgian alphabet is one of the 14 original alphabets existing in the world. It is unique to the Georgians. It is not shared by any other people in the world. It is interesting for the fact that each letter in the alphabet has its corresponding phoneme. Thus, if you can hear the way a word sounds, you can spell it, and vice versa. Georgia embraced Christianity in the 4th century via Byzantium, and nowadays most of Georgians are Orthodox beliefs. The unification of Kartvelian tribes is assumed to have taken place as early as the 1st century BC. From the period from 6th to 5th century BC, 2 states were established on what is now the territory of modern Georgia, Iberia, that was the eastern Georgia, and Kolchis, western Georgia. And the Kolchis was the destination of Argonauts during the quest for the Golden Fleece. So actually, Georgia claimed the attention of the cultural world as early as the classical period, and the first information about Georgians we have from Greek and Roman authors. Xenophon, Herodotus, Plutarch, Strabo, Tacitus, they talk about the high level of social, economic, and cultural life of Georgians. And also we have much information from the authors of antiquity, as well as the pilgrims and the travelers, about the viticulture, winemaking, and the useful properties of Georgian wine. In the 3rd century BC, Apollonius of Rhodos, in his composition about the voyage of Argonauts to the Kolchis, when describing the King Ayat's column, he writes that the columns were entwined with the grapevine, and the Laden with grapevine bunches obscured the walls. There are many archaeological evidences of the mythical land of Golden Fleece of Kolchis, but I love most of all this bronze statue, this tamada, which depicts a man seated in the armchair holding a drinking horn in his right hand, and it attests to the importance of wine growing in Kolchis, and also mirrors a very important and continuous tradition of a Georgian feast with tamada as a toastmaster at the head of the table. And when you come to Georgia, you will definitely be invited to the Georgian table, where you will see this guy. But not in the bronze bowl, but the real man, who will dedicate toast to you, say all the best, wish you all the best, and drink Georgian wine, which you will be then, of course, taste in 1.5 hours by the presentation. And he will drink it with this kind of the horn. So this tradition is absolutely live and continues in Georgia. Xenophon write that for the Caucasians living at the shores of the Black Sea make very strong and heavy wine, and they dilute it with water, and when diluted, they have a very pleasant taste and aroma. Procopius Caesariensis, the chronicler of the 6th century, writes that the Meschians, these are Georgians living in the southern part of the country, they have vineyards, and the viticulture is very developed at that period. Then, Chardin, a French traveler, when telling about his visiting to Transcaucasia, in his traveler notes, it admits that there is no other country where such good wine is drunk in such large quantities. And I absolutely agree with Monsieur Chardin, because same picture is today. So that's another reason why to come to Georgia. So welcome, and please enjoy it yourself. And by the way, there are many jokes about drinking in Georgia, because Georgians have a very, I would say, ironic, a very self-ironic approach, I would say. I love this story when man visits a doctor and says, "Doctor, please help me. I have a big problem. When I drink too much, I start talking with myself, and I never stop. I have a permanent conversation with myself. I cannot stand it. Please help me." And doctor replies, "You know, that's not a big deal. I would not say that's a pathology because, honestly, when I drink much, I also start talking with myself. That's a normal thing." "Yes, doctor, but the problem is that you talk with a professor, and I talk with an idiot." So we Georgians, we love joking, and we love the joyful life. And the wine culture helps us in direction greatly, to be honest. And what is also very interesting that although Georgia's territory is just 27,000 square miles, as I've told you, there are more than 500 species of cultured grape wine and wine in the territory, in such an abundance of the different species of wine. It's convincing that this area is indeed an ancient cradle of wine, and the theory that Georgia is the cradle of wine appeared in the international literature when a famous writer and the researcher of viticulture and winemaking, Hugh Johnson, expressed this idea in his book, The Story of Wine. It was published in 1989. And by the way, based on the work of Hugh Johnson, a permanent exhibition in London, in Great Britain, was opened, where Georgia was declared the most ancient area where viticulture and winemaking originated, and the first corner, named the Cradle of Wine, was allotted to Georgia as the birthplace of the wine. And the same assumption later was made by a worldwide recognized researcher of wine history, Pennsylvania University Professor Dr. Patrick McGovern, in his book, The Ancient Wine. And this assumption was made based on the laboratory analysis of the grape seeds unearthed in early Neolithic archaeological sites in the southeastern part of Georgia. And for instance, in Shulaveri, there was unearthed the most ancient grape pip, dating back to the 6th millennium BC, which is the eloquent evidence to the fact that even at that period, the predecessors of Georgia, they processed grapes and made wine. The biomolecular research conducted under the supervision of Dr. McGovern confirmed the presence of organic acids, typical for wine, on the walls of clay vessels dated 6,000 years BC. And what's very important that these organic acids are markers of wine from Vitis vinifera grape. That means that this wine was cultured and domesticated. Then the researchers from the University of Milan studied the climate of the 6th millennium BC and confirmed that conditions in Kfemokartli, Georgia, 8,000 years ago were suitable for grape cultivation. And the laboratory studies conducted in the Weizmann Institute in Israel used the C14 dating, which is a very exact method, to determine that a sample dated back to the period from 6,000 to 5,800 years BC. And finally, just several months ago, in November 2017, the International Scientific Journal, PNAS, the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences of the United States of America, published an article, an early Neolithic wine of Caucasus in of Georgia in South Caucasus, confirming that the tribes inhabiting that area made wine 8,000 years ago. So, the Global Scientific Society today admits that the first indication of winemaking was originated on what is now today the territory of Georgia, and from this place that spread to the world, making a significant impact on the agriculture, human culture, medicine, biology, and development of the civilizations. And what is also very important for me, that this tradition started 8,000 years ago, have been consecutive during the centuries for Georgia, and is live for today in this country. And this can be said both about pre-Christian and post-Christian epochs. In Georgian mythology, the grapevine is considered to be a divine plant. It was worshipped and thought to be the tree of life. The way the grapevine entwines the stake is perceived as a symbol of the beauty. And therefore, the main lines of Georgian ornaments are reminiscent of the vine entwining the stakes. The vine ornament can be found on famous ancient goblet from Trialeti. In Georgian ornaments, the leaves and grain bunches are depicted and can be clearly seen on Georgian frescoes, and in same manners are adorned the facades of Georgian churches. And there's one more very strong connection with the vine cult and the Christian symbolics. Saint Nino, who spread Christianity in Georgia in the 4th century, tied up with her hairs a cross made from grape wine canes. Now, very briefly about the very original and oldest technology of winemaking in Georgia. Georgia is the only country where kvevri, this clay wine jar burned in the ground, is used and still remains the only country where this unique product of the pottery is in use. You can clearly see the left side. This is kvevri made on what is now the territory of Georgia 8,000 years ago. It is unearthed in the southern eastern part of Georgia. And the right side, there's modern kvevri. And today, thousands of Georgians, they make and keep the wine in that kind of the vessels nowadays in villages. So this tradition is also continuous and absolutely alive in Georgia. In 2013, UNESCO included Georgian kvevri into the list of the intangible heritage of humanity. And right in the beginning of this millennium, 2001, UNESCO proclaimed Georgian polyphonic singing a masterpiece of the oral and intangible heritage of humanity. We Georgians are very proud that one of the greatest composers of all time, Igor Stravinsky, said following words about Georgian folk music. Here's these words. Some of the strongest musical impressions I have had recently come from Schomburg's Jacob's Ladder and from recordings of Georgian polyphonic folk song. This active musical performance tradition with its roots in the ancient past is something remarkable that offers more to performance than all of the achievements of modern music. And what is now significant at present for the folk music of Georgia? Present in folk music of Georgia presents in two vectorial direction. In coexistence of different style, musical dialects, and diversity of folklore dialects. And in this direction, three aspects should be admitted first of all. This is diversity of musical dialects, highly developed polyphony of multifarious types, and contrast. Contrast is the main feature of Georgian musical mentality. Here's the map of Georgia with its regions, and 15 musical dialects can be distinguished on this territory. Each of them, it has its own melodic world, performing manner, and this or that type of polyphony. There are obvious differences between them, but an attentive listener could easily notice the integrity of the musical language and their provenance from the common root. Interesting is also that the one feature binds all these regions. This is polyphony. Polyphony is the unifying feature of folk songs from all regions of Georgia. Now, I would like to say that very interesting is the fact that during the centuries, Georgia was surrounded with the neighboring countries who had monadic musical traditions. Therefore, most of researchers in this field believe that Georgian polyphony developed without any outside influence. And according to the great researcher, Georgian researcher Ivan Bagashvili, more than 60 Georgian terms denoting voices and their functions were established over the age. And it's a key evidence of the antiquity of Georgian polyphony and its local origin. Now I'd like to focus your attention to the type of polyphony, which is called contrast polyphony, where each part acquires independence and constructs its own melodic pattern that facilitates emergence of very unusual and very vivid accords, most of which are dissonances. And in this direction, Guria and Gurian musical dialects should be admitted and paid special attention to. Guria is a historical and ethnographic region in the western part of Georgian. They're very popular form of singing in trios, which is quite rare for other dialects. I will explain why. Because each part in Gurian trio singing forms are performed by only one singer. That gives an absolute freedom for artistic imagination and for the improvisation which Gurian singers aspire to achieve. And prominent Gurian singers never repeat initial version of this song. Instead, they always come up with a new version. Therefore, when asked about the exact quantity of the versions of this or that song, an eminent Gurian singer, Artem Erkomaishvili, replied, "There are as many as good performers are out there." Now, I would like to demonstrate one absolutely brilliant specimen of Gurian polyphonic singing. This is a video material from my copyright folkloric TV show from Georgian national broadcaster. And please pay attention that this music it's a folk music. It is not composed by a composer. It is created by people and also performed by people who have no professional academic musical education. But nevertheless, in spite of that, please pay attention to the complexity of the musical texture and to the workmanship of these singers. So please, the video material. Interesting, isn't it? Well, and Gurians, they have, by the way, perfect sense of humor. When I was shooting this program, there was a series of these folkloric TV shows, and I've asked some of the singers, part of them were over there from this trio, to make a video recording of the process when they work in the field and sing, because this tradition of performing is also live. And I asked, let's tape it. Okay, then we are ready. I asked to the technicians, all this stuff, this crew, the camera, everything was allocated, and all the technical equipment on this field. It was nearby the river. So these people, they were going to work and sing simultaneously as they usually do. And suddenly, one of the technicians who was in charge of the sound, he is telling me that it's impossible to start now tape recording. So why? Because very high noise comes from the riverside, and it disturbs us to make a high-quality recording. And I pay attention. That was a frog quacking. Frogs were quacking. That's a horrible sound, What to do? Frogs do not have a remote control, so we had to wait. We waited 5 minutes, no changes. Then 10 minutes, this same situation. After 15 minutes, this frog's quacking got even louder. Then one of these persons who stands on the right side, Mirab, he suddenly has taken a stone and has thrown to the direction of the riverside. And this quacking suddenly stopped, immediately, abruptly. Then everyone turned to him, gazed, and I asked, hey, how did you do that? And you know what was his answer? I've just killed the conductor, he says. This is way of their thinking, which is reflected in the music. Very briefly about the polyphonic forms in Gurian, which divides in two large groups. They are songs with krimanchuli and without krimanchuli. What does it mean, the strange word krimanchuli? It derives from two Georgian words, krini and manchuli, that literally means a twisted falsetto. So it's a high-pitched voice that requires a special artistic skills and special glottal position for intonation, and it adds a special richness and a color to this krimanchuli type of song. And again, I would like to refer to the words of Igor Stravinsky and his words about krimanchuli. He said following: the Georgian yodel, called krimanchuli, is the finest of this that I have heard. And I would like to demonstrate this recording of this song, after listening of which a great French writer and musicologist, Romain Rolland, said following words: I'm a musician and I have heard music from many peoples of the world, but I've never heard anything as brilliant as this. And this recording I'm going to show now, this is recorded in 1907. This is from Georgian National Archive. It's a unique version. So the quality of the sound is the corresponding that was at that time. But please pay attention to the complexity of the musical texture and to that high-pitched voice called krimanchuli. Here it is. There is a fragment of that song, and perhaps you have noticed that some of the faces on these photos were scratched. It's quite a tragic story, because there are thousands of these kind of scratched photos in Georgian National Archives. And the story is following. These people whose faces were scratched, during the Stalin's repression in 1930s, they were imprisoned, sentenced, and they were shot with an absolutely cynical formulation as people's enemies. And even singers could not avoid this tragic fate during these communist repressions, and the members of their family, be afraid not to be imprisoned also, they were enabled to extirpate every link with the members of their family. They were enabled to scratch the images, So the images are not preserved, but fortunately this recording preserved their voices, so it has a historic importance apart the artistic value of it. Now, very briefly about the Eastern Georgia. It says Kakheti. I'm going to proudly present, because I'm from Kakheti. This is a historical ethnographic region, and there's an immense, diversity of musical forms and the singing forms. Unfortunately, I don't have it here, but I forgot this here, but okay. We have this picture of it there. And before I talk about the polyphonic type of Kakheti, I would like to say that there's a very interesting monophony. There's very interesting solo performing. And in this direction, Urmuli is one of the best specimens of vocal lyricism. It derives from the word uremi, which is an arroba, an ox-driven cart, which has been widely used in the economic life of Georgians, and not only for carrying the loads within a village, but also for exporting the goods to the neighboring country and also importing some products, mainly salt. I remember the phrase of President George W. Bush. He said following, most of our import comes from other countries. This is wonderful phrase, I remember. The same was with Georgia. Most of our import also come from neighboring countries, therefore we needed some. So Uremi was, and as far as the this type of activity took place mainly in the hot season, preferable time for journey with Uremi was nighttime when the temperature drops, and to prevent a driver sitting on the ox-driven cart from falling asleep, and also to kill time, he hummed the melody of this song and wrote his thoughts, concerns, joys into this song. Therefore, this song is also called Song of Thoughts. Now I am going, without any recording, to sing it for you. Yes, I'm going to do as a Kaherian. Yes. So you can imagine me sitting on this arroba, nighttime, summer times, me over there, silence around, and the melody of Urmuli. Let's go. Hari, harali, harale. Haru, harali, haralu, Gastie, haro gastie, satsa gaten de babu, haru harali haralo, haru laluda. Ach zaman smivala marilode. Maril samovidan brol savu, Jera de daz gadave chavevi, Mereshvil sadat sol savu, Haru harali aralu harulaluda. Sheni chirime kamecho, Nikora Haris de Damo Sheni Tazradili Harebi Mimidi Samaril Zedavo Sheni Tazradili Harebi Mimidi Samaril Zedavo Haru Harali Aralo Harulaluda. Hey. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, the polyphony, it can be described in Kakheti as polyphonic dialogue of two upper voices over a moving bass drone, which is very typical for Kartli and Kakheti. These both are regions of eastern part of Georgia. And what is very significant is highly developed harmonic language and most complex modulation that forms a very monolithic musical texture and the grandeur character of the Kakhetian songs. And the aesthetic essence of the nature of Kakhetian songs were described best of all in the words of one of the greatest cellists and conductors of the world, Mstislav Rostropovich. He said following words: Georgian song is remarkably beautiful, happy and sad, strong and gentle. There is no other polyphony like it. It is overwhelming and refined. Hearing it just once will give you a taste of eternity. And now, by the end of my talk, I would like to tell you briefly a story that connects Georgian wine, Georgian song, United States of America, and NASA. Yes. And in this context, I would like to say the words of gratitude towards two great Americans. First of all, this is Carl Sagan, an absolutely legendary personality, who had it in 1967, NASA's two programs, Voyager 1 and the Voyager 2. And they were all both launched to the space in that year. And the interstellar mission of the Voyager 1 envisioned both the space reacher and also the idea to send the information about the Earth and the cultural achievement of the mankind to higher developed civilizations which may exist somewhere in the other galaxies. And for that purpose, a famous golden disk was recorded, which the length of just total length is 90 minutes. And among the compositions of Mozart, Beethoven, and other masterpieces of world music, a fragment from Georgian Kakhetian table song, Chakrula, was included in that golden disk and sent to the galaxy on this spaceship. And it has happened thanks to another great personality, is famous researcher and ethnomusicologist Alan Lomax, who recommended to include Chakrula, Carl Sagan in that historical recording. And now I would like you to demonstrate this fragment from the golden disk. In 1990, the spacecraft left our solar system, so Georgian song on the American aircraft set out its longest journey. So now I'd like to ask you to imagine yourself in that spacecraft. Please fly to the galaxy with the Georgian song and feel the eternity. So thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now, our concert is going to start, and for that purpose, I'm really very glad and very happy to have an opportunity to introduce a very talented group. This is the ensemble of Tbilisi State University, one of the best student ensembles. Their artistic imagination very broad. The music they perform, this is not a pure folklore. It is not a so-called authentic folklore, but they use widely the Georgian folk elements and include in wonderful compositions, very interesting potpourris, and their performance is full with the energy, which I more than certainly you will like and you will have fun. Therefore, I would like to ask to the soloist of this wonderful group, Gordela, to come to the stage. And let me introduce them personally. Tamuna Aladashvili, Please welcome Tia Kiria, Natia Khamaladze, and Sofia Kiria.
Scenalazano verso Dudude Nushi azuche agaregulia Sadr pomet samghav shorsta garguli Mecena savitvar dadanudura Sadr pomet samghav shorsta garguli Mecena savitvar dadanudura ხან მგელი მითობს ფარასა წეული არაცის უნდა მოგწერო წერილი დღეღამის მანათობელო უნდა მოგწერო წერილი დღეღამის მანათობელო უნდა მოგწერო წერილი დღეღამის მანათობელო ვაი უცეცხლოდ დამწველო უღვინოდ დამათრობელო ვაი უცეცხლოდ დამწველო უღვინოდ დამათრობელო ვაი უცეცხლოდ დამწველო უღვინოდ დამათრობელო 산아갈라다 고고나 산아갈라다 고고나 산아갈라다 고고나 산아갈라다 고고나 고거니 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 고고 고거니 고거니 고고나 고거니 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 고고 고거니 고거니 고고나 산아갈라다 고고나 산아갈라다 고고나 산아갈라다 고고나 산아갈라다 고고나 고거니 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 고고 고거니 고거니 고고나 고거니 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 고고 고거니 고거니 고고나 산아갈라다 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 ჩნევადი მიმობნეულს მინდორამე ბაზაზინა მარჯნის ფერღავია იმერეთში ეძახიან სახოვანელს ბაზაზინა მარჯნის ფერღავია იმერეთში ეძახიან Romar,
final composition, little surprise.
We shall overcome.
join me again in thanking these wonderful musicians and Dr. Bagashvili for being with us tonight. That was such a treat. Thank you all so much for making the journey and sharing your talents with us. And a real special thanks to Dr. Bagashvili, because without him, much of this content would not have come together. So we owe him an extra round of applause for helping to pull together these musicians tonight and for his presentation. Thank you so much for joining us. Please join us for some refreshments and some wine out on the concourse. Thank you again for coming, and have a good night.